The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency says more than 30 million tons of food is tossed away in the country each year. Meanwhile, about 15% of Americans can't meet their household food needs. Taking a broader view, 15% of the world's population is chronically undernourished. Joining me now for more insight is Eric Holt-Gimenez. He's the executive director of the Institute for Food and Development Policy, or First Food, out of Berkeley, California. Let me ask you, what is the most effective way to ensure that food isn't wasted?
Yes, good evening. Well, I'm from FoodFirst in Berkeley, California, Institute for Food and Development Policy. And the thing to do is start with the cause, not the effect. And the cause of all the food waste is our system of overproduction. We produce more than 1.5 times more than enough food for every man, woman, and child on the planet. And so pushing all that food through the food system inevitably creates waste. We have a very wasteful system, and that's just the structural reality of our food system. The reason we overproduce like this is because agro-food companies like to buy their products cheap from the farmer at the farm gate. And as long as you have oversupply, then prices at the farm gate are going to be low. And that's what they want, is to buy on the cheap. And then they're able to break into markets in the global south, like Mexico, and basically put farmers there out of business because they can sell their products for under the cost of production. And they put the local food businesses out of business as well, and make those countries dependent on the U.S. and on the global north for the food supply, which is fine, except that it creates waste. It creates tremendous amount of greenhouse gases. It creates it's tremendously expensive to process, and it creates dependency. And when food prices go up, then people go hungry.
How do you create the paradigm shift to get away from that?
Well, I think we have policies which are well known, which are over a half-century old, which we abandoned in the 1980s when we gave our food system to the free market. And so what you have to do is regulate supply, and so you don't get oversupply. And one of the best ways to do that is through grain reserves. Grain reserves aren't just about having food for a rainy day. They're about keeping the price of food stable, so that if there's too much food on the market and too much grain on the market, the government can buy up the grain. And if there's not enough grain, they can release grain. So it's good for farmers, and it's also good for consumers.
Back in 2010, I saw this documentary, Dive, Living Off America's Waste, where basically it was dumpster divers going and getting food out of the back of grocery stores that was perfectly good to eat. And they were really kind of illustrating how all this food's thrown away, and perhaps it would be better if it was distributed to people in need. Is that one of the solutions, do you think?
Well, this is, trying to catch the cows after the barn door is already open. I mean, let's start with the cause rather than the effects. I mean, the cause of hunger, the cause of all this waste, is a wasteful system which is very inequitable. The 50 million people in the United States who are food insecure, most of them work, and most of them work in the food system. So, what these people need are fair wages. They need living wages so they can buy food, and they don't have to go dumpster diving.
What about innovative solutions? Are you seeing any out there on the horizon right now?
Well, the innovative solutions actually come from the era of the Great Depression and the New Deal, which is, grain reserves and regulating supply and giving people jobs, living wage jobs. And that's when we started our first food programs as well, with people who were simply too poor or unable to work. And I think we have to go back to the regulatory lessons of history because, quite frankly, we've seen that the free market isn't capable of feeding the poor, and it's certainly not capable of reducing its waste, and it's certainly not capable of reducing greenhouse gases.
So, Eric, put a face on this. I mean, you deal with people dealing with this issue on a daily basis. Is it one of these, it's like the cycle of poverty, it's difficult to break out of it, and because of the restrictions that you're talking about?
Well, people are hungry not because there's not enough food. As I said, there's more than enough food. There's an oversupply of food. People are hungry because they're poor and they can't afford to buy the food. And so, we bring in, dumpster diving, or we ask the supermarkets for charity and whatnot. And these are stopgap measures. What we really need is to take back control over our food system, and we can do that by reestablishing things like grain reserves and supply management. And I think we also have to break up the monopolies that are controlling the food system. These monopolies made record profits in 2008 during the food crisis when 1 billion people were going hungry. So they're not the solution, they're the problem.
All right, Eric, thanks so much for joining us from California. Appreciate it.